So let's move into the Metta Sutta. This is the Buddha's words on loving kindness, and we will all be muted apart from Gita, who will chant it for us, and we can chant along. It can be useful to bring to mind before we start something. It could be a person, it could be a pet, it could be an experience, a place that helps you connect with a feeling of friendliness, of love, of care, of warmth. So I just say that so that we can start orienting, leaning towards that as Marlene puts up the Metta Sutta for us all. And she'll mute us all, but we can all chant along as Gita unmutes and chants for us. Thank you, Marlene and Gita.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Gita. I invited people before we started to think about something that naturally connects you to those feelings that the Metta Sutta is encouraging us to strengthen. And I hadn't got something in my own mind before Gita started chanting, but one of the things that came up into my mind immediately when we started, I've just been for a few days traveling through parts of Western Australia, a little bit north of where we are in Perth and also east. I spent some time on the coast and up in Kalbarri for those who are from these parts, and up high on the cliffs watched, I would say, over the 2 hours I was there, dozens of whales, mothers and their babies mostly at this time, traveling south for summer, where they go into the Southern Ocean and eat their little hearts out with krill. I wasn't thinking so much of the krill in the loving kindness. I was thinking about those mothers and their babies coming down and just watching them, and also the other human beings that were up on the cliffs with me, watching them, the delight, the joy, the connection that was experienced between those of us who were standing, appreciating these magnificent beasts. And it looked like they were also having an enormous amount of fun, breaching, splashing their tails, waving their flippers. And so that image was a lovely one to bring to mind, just arose spontaneously and think about as we chanted the Metta Sutta. Last week, so this is my second of 4 weeks that I'll be teaching. Thank you, Marlene. No, I don't mean that. I mean thank you, Marlene. Last week I shared and spoke a little bit about two primary orientations that I took when I went on a 1-month self-retreat recently at Jhana Grove, which is the retreat centre of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, up in the forest, maybe 50 kilometres from the centre of Perth, something like that, 60, something like that. And I took the intention to strengthen this heart and mind's capacity for loving kindness, for metta, and the other Brahma Viharas, compassion, joy at another person's good fortune, and equanimity. So an intention to cultivate those qualities so that they would arise more easily, more automatically, and in more situations. A lifetime's work, but that was one of my intentions going into the retreat. And the other intention, and connected to that first one, was from motivated by remembering a saying of the third Chinese patriarch of Zen. His name was saying is one that's heard it. The great way or the path is not difficult for those who have no preferences. For those who have no preferences. And I'm interested in exploring that a bit more tonight. So I hope that there's something useful for you in considering this further if you were with us last week. Preferences are also very closely connected to the focus of tonight's meditation, which is a meditation where we'll be exploring what's called in Pali, the language of the earliest discourses of the Buddha, Vedana, or feeling tone. It's whether we experience something as pleasant, as unpleasant, or as neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neutral. And it's the second foundation of mindfulness. So I'm exploring in the meditations the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Last week we did foundation of mindfulness in the body. This week we're looking in the meditation at strengthening mindfulness of feeling tones, whether we experience something as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we'll come back to that in a little bit when it's time to meditate. But you probably already are making the connection yourself between preferences and whether we're experiencing something as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It's not rocket science. Hey, I can see some nods going on. Yes, it makes sense. But returning to preferences, the idea of preferences and that we have preferences, we all have preferences, and how we might work with those preferences, because they can be an obstacle to freedom, to peace, to balance. Just thinking about how many fights occur simply because two people have different preferences, whether it's, interpersonal, domestic relationship, or relationship of nations. And if at a intrapersonal, just me as an individual, if I need the world to meet my preferences, it's going to end in tears, because that's not how things work. The weather, the economic situation, this body, politicians, actually nearly all of the world's 8 billion people, all of them operate without giving any consideration to our preferences. So if we need our preferences to be met, we're going to be very fragile and probably unhappy, constantly disappointed, and not to mention how much of our time will be focused on trying to get those preferences met, whether it's through demanding or through manipulation or through other means. And that also means that we've got a very self-focus if that's, we need our preferences to be met. The Buddha's teachings really help us to become less dependent on external factors for our well-being, and more able to find an inner orientation of peace and joy and love and balance, the things I was talking to earlier on. But this doesn't happen without some effort, some intention, because we come into this world hardwired for preferences. Some of our preferences relate to survival. It's important that we move in certain directions, away from certain things, towards certain things, and preferences can help in that survival, moving away and moving towards. But in our modern context, most of the preferences that we have aren't to do with survival. And it certainly supports our contentment if we are able to be okay with a broad range of conditions. If we can meet a broad range of conditions with acceptance, with balance, with equanimity. When I've thought about that saying of the third patriarch of Chinese Zen, the great way, the path is not difficult for those who have no preferences, some questions arise for me, but that's because I'm not an enlightened being. So you're having an unenlightened being just walk through some of these thoughts and reflections. In some ways, like any saying, it's a bit black and white, because not all preferences are equal, it seems to me. Surely, maybe it's important to prefer love, to prefer peace, to prefer kindness. I'm not sure I want to get rid of all preferences. The preferences which are self-oriented and simply based on patterns that have developed over decades may well be more helpful to be eased off, dropped back on. My preference to have milk in my coffee, to do my exercise in the morning rather than the afternoon. for me to do the cooking and my partner to do the shopping. I'm waving at him. He's out there watching football. I don't watch football. So all those preferences sometimes feel really important to me. And yet to you, as I said them, they probably feel really unimportant. And yet I can get really tight above those preferences. I'd love to have greater freedom from those kinds of preferences, to let go of them easily, to hold them lightly. Those self-focused preferences, the ones that just seem more like patterns that have arisen, developed, they seem very different from preferences which are oriented to the well-being of all. And an example of that, a preference that I have, is a preference that humans take better care of this planet, a preference that we look after the environment rather than continue to trash it. That preference makes sense. Is that a wholesome preference? Is that a word to use to describe a preference? Thinking about how we relate to our preferences, I think is one way where we can bring a bit more wisdom to the reality that we have preferences. And as I was thinking about this, there seems to be, I mean, there's probably lots of different aspects of bringing wisdom to preferences, but a couple of them stood out for me in how we might relate to preferences skillfully. And the first one is how attached we are to that preference. And for some of you, just saying how attached we are to that preference brings up the second noble truth, that idea that trying to get what we want, to hang on to what we have while we're avoiding and rejecting what we don't want, inevitably leads to disappointment. And ignorance of that reality is the root cause of human suffering. So how attached, how clinging, how tight are we to our preference seems to be a really important element to how preferences will play out in our life. And the second aspect is, does the preference that we're holding take into consideration the nature of things? Are we seeing clearly? Are we expecting from the world, are we expecting from people something which the world and people can't deliver? Is the preference based on a need for continuity when we know that change and impermanence are part of life? While I was on retreat at Jhana Grove last month, the preference that I mentioned around preferring a healthy environment, preferring humans to do something about climate change, popped up quite regularly. And it was something that I worked with over the month. It's a preference that causes me quite a bit of suffering. And so it seemed worthwhile getting to know it a little bit more intimately and try and bring some wisdom to it. In the southwest of Western Australia, where I am and where the Jhana Grove Retreat Centre is, climate change has caused our average temperatures to increase and the average rainfall to decrease. And the climate science predicts that that is the way that this part of the world will be affected by human-induced climate change. our last summer here was very long. It started early and finished late. It was a very long, hot, dry period, a drought. And so the forest that Jhana Grove Retreat Centre is located in was really affected by that period. And as I do my regular walks, I would see signs of death, trees, bushes, and so I'd be regularly reminded of the impact of human-induced climate change. And I don't want to be untouched by the suffering of plants and animals. It feels wholesome, in fact, to have sadness as a response that arises. In some ways, when I think about it, you know, avoiding sadness or avoiding being touched by what I saw, or trying to, you know, rush to equanimity as a response feels like that could well be an example of spiritual bypassing. So I saw the challenge as not necessarily getting rid of my preference, but instead rather doing my best to stay present to the reality of what was happening in the forest, accepting that this is how it is rather than fighting reality. This is what the situation is. Caring deeply and not shutting off, not shutting down, not giving up. Every day I would walk in the forest with the intention of opening up to the reality of the situation. And when I say opening up, for me, it's a very physical thing of being in the forest and really having a sense of physically opening up through the front of my chest to the trees, to bushes. You know, at times I'd be talking to them as I was walking through the forest, caring. I wanted to stay present to the experience, accept the world as it is, accept human beings as we are. You know, all of us, we're unenlightened. We are at times motivated by greed and aversion. We don't see clearly all the time. We can be deluded. And there's also that question of, even though I can think or believe that I have a sense of how things are going to play out, I've got no idea what the future will be. So reflecting on that way, accepting the reality, staying connected, staying present, acknowledging that, you know, human beings, we're limited beings, and reflecting on those different ways, trying to bring a bit of wisdom to my preference. It didn't eliminate the preference, but it enabled me to hold it a little more lightly and in a bigger context. Yes, the forests are suffering. Yes, I don't want it to happen. And yes, I can stay with this situation in a way that's open and balanced and caring, mostly. You know, it's an ongoing exploration. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction to the meditation, which, as I mentioned earlier on, is a meditation based on the second foundation of mindfulness, from the Satipatthana Sutta. So that's Vedana, or the aspect of our experience that is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And like I did last week, I'm going to adopt aspects of the approach to practice from Bhikkhu Analayo and his work in this area. I'll guide you through. You're most welcome to do whatever meditation you like, but I'll guide us through 3 body scans. So the first body scan, we will be invited to pay attention to pleasant sensations. The second body scan, we will pay particular attention to unpleasant body sensations. And the third body scan that we do, we will look for what are a little more tricky, which are the sensations that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant, sort of neutral body sensations. That quality of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral condition our preferences. And they also, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, also conditions what gets generated in our mind. The thoughts, the emotions, and then the actions or the behavior that can result. When it's pleasant, we want to hang on to it, get more of it. When it's unpleasant, we want to get rid of it. And if it's neutral, we tend to ignore it. As we develop and pay attention to this quality of our experience, Vedana or feeling tone, it's really important to bring wisdom with us. Wisdom that recognizes pleasant is just pleasant. It's not to be clung to or run after. Unpleasant is just unpleasant. It's not to be pushed away or resisted. And neutral experiences are just that, not to be ignored. So the encouragement is during the meditation to do your best to bring an accepting, curious, caring mindfulness to the sensations, whatever their quality, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. It's such a useful practice because so often we don't notice this aspect of our experience, even though it's part of every experience that we have. And so it is conditioning our thinking, it's conditioning our emotions, it's conditioning our behavior, but so often outside of our awareness. So this orientation to notice whether our experience has a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone to it is really useful. One caveat that I think is really important when we are exploring particularly unpleasant feeling tone is that nothing I'm saying means that we should not look after our physical and psychological well-being. In a situation of unpleasant Vedana feeling tone where the situation is dangerous or harmful, it's really important to move away and look after ourselves. So wisdom is needed as we engage with these practices. There's no encouragement to stay in an unsafe situation. And that's probably more likely to happen in real, in the outside world than during a meditation, but still worth keeping in mind. And that said, the practice is valuable. There's a lot to be gained in building our capacity to be with a wider range of experiences without adding an aversive reaction if it's unpleasant, or desire if it's pleasant, or sort of indifference if it's neutral. Now tonight, looking at Vedana through the body scans initially. We will expand after that into Vedana, feeling tone of other aspects. But starting with the body, if the body is relatively okay, the intensity of pleasant, unpleasant is likely to be pretty mild. And so that's pretty straightforward to be with. It's not too difficult to be with pleasant when it's mild and unpleasant when it's mild without what comes next being generated, the aversion or the clinging, the grasping. When the intensity of the Vedana, pleasant and unpleasant sensation, is much higher, then it becomes actually much more interesting practice. For example, if we have a strong, unpleasant body sensation, sometimes called pain, that very easily generates a lot of activity in the mind. Strong emotions, maybe frustration or fear or judgment or even anger. And though that can be fueled by our thoughts. This is awful. I can't stand it. Why me? What am I doing wrong? It's not fair. So if you have the opportunity to observe strong, unpleasant sensations tonight, it's actually a really good opportunity to investigate. Really get to know the sensation and the reaction to the sensation, the emotions and the thoughts that can tumble out of that. It's natural to want to do the opposite, to turn away from what is unpleasant. The investigating of something difficult, something pleasant, isn't intuitive. So please do your best not to add self-judgment if you notice lots of resistance, aversion. Resistance and aversion are to be expected, even if they're not the most skillful response. And if you find that there is some self-judgment cropping up, maybe you can bring some understanding to that. You're doing your best, given where you're at. Okay, so let's make ourselves comfortable. Please make yourself comfortable. And in that invitation to make yourself comfortable, I might primarily have been thinking about the body. So noticing how the body is, posture, making any adjustments that and as we do that, we are already harking back to the first foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness of the body. We are noticing how the body is, how the posture is. We become aware. And remembering to do our best to just give it our best shot and let that be good enough. So if you like, bringing attention to the head area And as you bring your attention up into the head area, noticing if there are any pleasant sensations. Now, it doesn't have to be super, super pleasant, just slightly pleasant is fine. Just a little bit more than neutral. Moving the attention through the head and noticing any sensations that feel pleasant. And letting the attention come down into the neck region with that same orientation. Are there any pleasant sensations here? Could be sensations of touch with clothing or temperature, warmth, coolness, tingling, relaxation. You don't need to sort of identify why it's pleasant. Just, there's a pleasant sensation. And coming down into one of your shoulders, doesn't matter which one. And in that shoulder region, feeling, tuning in to any pleasant sensations here. And letting the attention move into the arm of that side of the body, same side. Scanning for any sensation that might be slightly pleasant. And coming on down into the hand, that arm. Pleasant sensations. And bringing the attention now, if it feels okay, up into the other shoulder area with that orientation. Ooh, are there pleasant sensations in this shoulder region? Sometimes this kind of exploration can make us feel like we're in school again and we have to get it right. Soften that expectation of getting it right, particularly if this is a new practice for you. It's our first time to see if we can find sensations of a particular quality. Just do your best. Who knows what we'll find? Coming into the arm on that side of the body. Noticing any pleasant sensations. And coming into the hand. Pleasant sensations. Heads. Coming down into the lower part of the torso. Pleasant sensations. Coming into the hip of, doesn't matter, one side of your body, you choose. Noticing any pleasant sensations in that region. Bring the attention down the leg. Are there any pleasant sensations there? Coming into the foot. Some gentle touch or warmth or texture of fabric or something else. Any pleasant sensations there? Coming up into the other hip. Pleasant sensations. Coming down that leg. Aware of any pleasant sensations in that leg. And coming into the foot. Feeling, knowing any pleasant sensations there. And don't worry if you're not entirely sure if it's good enough to be a pleasant sensation. We're just having a practice tonight. And now we're going to move to unpleasant sensations, and we'll start in the same foot that we ended the pleasant sensation body scan. So starting in that foot, but changing the lens that we're looking through. Having a particular orientation for any unpleasant sensations in that foot. Coming up the leg on that side of the body. Tuning in, feeling any unpleasant sensations. All the way up to the hip. And then coming over to the other foot with that inquiry. Are there any unpleasant sensations here? Attuning to the sensations in the other foot with on the lookout for unpleasant sensations. Coming up that leg, unpleasant sensations. Into the hip. Gently bringing the awareness into the lower part of the torso with that question of, are there any unpleasant sensations here? And again, it doesn't have to be super unpleasant, just ever so slightly unpleasant. Or maybe there is something very unpleasant in the lower part of the torso. Noticing and remembering as best we can to bring wisdom and not bring too much judgment. If we can, just dropping all judgment. It's unpleasant. Yeah, that's here. Coming into the top half of the torso. Unpleasant. Coming into one hand. Are there any unpleasant sensations in the hand? Moving into the arm with that inquiry. Anything unpleasant here? And up into the shoulder region. Unpleasant sensation. Coming into the other hand. Tuning, noticing if there's any unpleasant sensation in the other hand. Gently coming into the arm. Unpleasant sensation. In the shoulder region. Letting the attention come into the neck. Any unpleasant sensations there? And continuing on up into the head. Unpleasant sensations. And for our last body scan, we're paying attention to sensations that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neutral. Maybe sensations that we'd normally not even notice, not pay attention to. See how we go. So starting with the head, any neutral sensations in the head region. In the neck region, any sensations that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And we'll come into both shoulder regions at the same time, if that's possible, feeling the sensations of both shoulders. On the lookout for sensations that are neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Letting the attention flow down the arms, attuning to sensation, in particular neutral sensation. And coming into the hands. Gently bringing the attention into the top of the torso, tuning into sensation, neutral sensation in particular. Coming on down into the lower torso, neutral sensations. We'll do both hips at the same time. On the lookout for neutral sensation. Gently moving the attention down the legs, both legs at the same time this time. Feeling sensation. On the lookout particularly for neutral sensation. And coming into the feet, both feet. Neutral sensation. And having done the 3 body scans, for the last part of the meditation, opening up to include all of this present moment experience. So it could be something we hear, smell, feel in the body. It could be something in the mind, a thought, an emotion. So whatever it is that you're experiencing, bring that question that Vedana is asking of us. Is this pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant? To any experience that you become aware of. So big open awareness. We're not going hunting, we're sitting back, and we will notice different things at different times. We're not generating the experience. We are becoming aware of the experience we're having with a particular interest in whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. I'm going to be silent for some time now as we investigate experience. Maybe you become aware of an urge to move or to scratch, itch. That's Vedana, that's feeling tone at work. Something unpleasant arises and we want to move away from it. We want to do something. So useful to see, to become attuned to that aspect of our experience. Maybe the mind is dangling carrots, thoughts that are more interesting than the relatively neutral experience of sitting observing. Maybe it's easy to get caught in those thoughts. And again, Vedana or this feeling tone is at work, moving our mind. If you find you get caught in thoughts, it's not a problem. It's actually an opportunity to hone our awareness of Vedana. So you can just ask the question when you wake up out of the thought, what was the feeling tone of that thought? Was it pleasant, unpleasant, neutral? And then coming back to the present moment where we're sitting back, observing this present moment unfolding, maybe having a sense of the subtle, pleasant aspect of being in the present moment. As our experience changes from moment to moment, so too the feeling tone, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Observing this changing aspect, the impermanent nature of it. And as we come towards the end of tonight's practice, it might be a very different practice than you're used to, or it might be something you're quite familiar with. It's an opportunity now to just notice, what did I observe? What did I learn through the last 30 minutes? Meditation's a process of gaining greater understanding of this mind and also training it. What did you notice tonight or this morning or lunchtime, whatever your time period? So welcome back. I initially had intended to talk a little bit more, but I think it might be interesting because it's a meditation that might be quite different for some people, to have a little bit of a conversation or share what your experience was if you're up for that. Questions, comments, all very welcome. And if there aren't any, that's fine too, because there's more that I can talk about. But it'd be lovely to hear from you. How was that for you? Martha. Hello, Martha. Good to see you.
So glad to be here. I'm just so grateful. Thank you for recognizing. You said earlier about the environment and acknowledging that if you're in a situation where the environment is unsafe or dangerous, it's important to move. Thank you for saying that. That helps so much. I don't know if you could speak to if you're trapped in a situation where there's no control and there's no, well, I mean, I guess it's an embarrassment of choices. Say, for example, go to the homeless shelter where there's 24 in a room, and you are subjected to chapel. I mean, which, I'm a believer, but not in that. Or you can go to, let's see, the battered women's shelter, where you're sharing a room with entire families of traumatized children and families. Or let's see here, and it was filthy. It was, if God don't make no junk, but if he did, it would be right there in that kitchen that I tried to clean. Or let's see here, where else did hospital, jail, let's see. Is the halfway house with sharing a room with 4 nonstop smoking talkers who throw the big book at you, or I don't know. You can't really speak to that because that's my problem. And I know I'm probably going to get eked out for this, which is fine. But thank you for recognizing that Martha, the environment.
Absolutely.
You don't need to send me an email again about getting too personal. Thank you.
I don't know that I did. The point that you're making is really well taken. It feels to me very much like an equation between the challenge of the external conditions and what we've been able to build up internally in order to be able to meet that. And to meet really difficult situations requires an awful lot of inner work to be able to meet that with balance and peace and, some equanimity. It is not an easy, straightforward thing to do. I really recognize the additional challenges that come with some environments. Certainly don't take that lightly. Important to notice that. Yeah, to know that. Steve. You're not unmuted yet.
Yes, now I'm unmuted.
You are. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Kathryn. Thank you. I've been listening to Ajahn Brahmali, a 9-day retreat he did. I've been using that through this week to try and center myself, and have really struggled with monkey mind. And tonight I was still. Yes. Yes, tonight I was still. Adding the breath to your guidance, the breath as my anchor. Yeah, it gave me a stillness that it's evaded me a little at times. I was a bit worried about going for looking for those negatives. I hide. It scares me.
Absolutely. Yep.
But it's just letting myself be there, and it was all very basic, physiological, and it was good. It was very good. Yeah.
That's interesting, Steve. That's such a powerful and completely normal response of because the unpleasant is designed to get us to turn away, is designed to get us reactive. You know, we're hardwired not to go towards it. So it's really normal and really natural to do that aversive response. And so noticing that, here's aversion, here's moving away, here's resistance, here's I don't want to do this. And to be able to say, yep, that's here too. And I'm gently going to see if I can stay with something that's unpleasant. You've already built a bit more capacity. You've already built a bit more ease with something that you don't like. And we know we get stuff thrown at us every day that we don't like. So what you've just described feels very skillful and worth recognizing as such. There was something that you said earlier on that I was going to just pick up on too.
The breath, anchoring on the breath. No.
Yep. What I was going to just acknowledge is that we can meditate with the monkey mind. We can be aware of the monkey mind. We can know the monkey mind. We can bring skillful attitudes to the monkey mind. So the fact that the monkey mind is there is not a problem. A still mind is gorgeous, and provides us with some nourishment and some sustenance to keep on going. But the monkey mind isn't wrong. The monkey mind is just the monkey mind.
It's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's an opportunity. In fact, the monkey mind is an opportunity to develop capacity, again, to be with what we don't want. Who wants to sit in meditation and have the mind be its monkey mind? Yeah. Most of us don't. But to be able to sit in meditation with the monkey mind and make peace with that is very powerful. I'd rather this were different, and this is how it is. It is like this, and I can be with it. I can be with it with an open heart. It's not what I want, but I can be with it.
Well, I'm not sure about that yet, but I'll get there.
Sometimes. For 30 seconds. And lovely that you had some stillness tonight. And that also can then lead us into, I want that next time too. So it's lovely to notice what arises when we have, what we perceive as a positive, pleasant experience. So yeah, good luck with that. Thank you very much, Steve. Yeah. And Bob, I noticed, I'm just going to go and open up my chat. I noticed you messaged me directly. Are you okay if I comment on that, Bob, or would you prefer not to? you're okay with that. I'm going to comment on the second bit. Bob's body is busted. And so that focus on the unpleasant can be activating. It can generate more intense emotions. It can generate more thoughts that actually fuel the unpleasant emotions. And with that, where your whole body's busted and where your normal way of responding is to put your attention on something else, which is a terrific way of learning to cope with a difficult body, it can be absolutely really challenging to bring attention to something that is unpleasant and painful. And there's some value in it, but it would be little bit by little bit by little bit. So is there an unpleasant part of your body, an unpleasant sensation that you could be with for 10 seconds, that you could open up to for 10 seconds with an intention of bringing interest and care, and as best we can, not adding judgment, not adding a whole heap of thoughts, just the basic experience of being with this sensation. It reminds me of the Buddhist teaching of the first and the second arrow. We all experience difficulty. Life, we are regularly being shot by an arrow, which is pain or some other form of difficulty, and that's unpleasant. What we generally do in response to that is add additional layers of resistance, of aversion, of why me. And I'm not suggesting that, Bob, this is what you do. This is what human beings do. So please don't hear me as saying, you know, this is anything to do with Bob. This is to do with humans. We have an unpleasant experience and our mind enrolls in the course and it's telling us, get out of here, don't do that, you're stupid, they are stupid, this is awful. And so that second arrow is the arrow that we fire to resist the first experience. Investigating that reaction to the first unpleasant experience is really useful. I noticed when I had that feeling, then this was generated, thoughts, emotions, da 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 da. Can I come back to, and again, Bob, just naming, starting with some sensation that's unpleasant, but not awful, not really super duper, you know, 10 out of 10, 4 out of 10. Is there an unpleasant sensation in the body that's only 4 out of 10 that I could sit with and notice what happens when I do that? And then when, yeah, that's too much, moving back to your usual ways of responding. But that intention to expand our capacity to sit with what's unpleasant and doing that gives us greater freedom. Sounds crazy. Okay. Any other reflections or comments?
Can I?
Gloria. Yeah.
I'm not able to join the session, but I just want to ask, like, you sit with your unpleasant experience, and then I encounter this occasion is like I have body pain, like, and then I think because my meditation build up my pain tolerance a lot, And then I think I kind of start to have difficulty like assessing whether this is a situation that is require a lot of attention or not. Does that make sense? Because I think like, yes, I can sit with it, but like and then I told I think I told the doctor that I'm in pain, and then I think he doesn't believe me because I didn't look like. And I just wondering how like with the meditation technique of like sitting with your experience, and then you take care of your physical sensation, because sometimes your body tell you that you should avoid this thing because it is bad. But meditation is like you try to accept it instead of running away from it. And I'm just wondering like how to take care of yourself properly while you're building up your pain tolerance.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Gloria. I think part of the useful exploration is to be able to see the difference between that first arrow and the second arrow. So in physical unpleasant experiences, to not to know that this experience is unpleasant. So it's not that we are denying that this is unpleasant. It's not that we are pretending or we're not pretending something that's different, but we're just not adding to it with the usual second arrow. So in the investigation of the experience, knowing what is the primary experience and what is it that I'm adding to. And you've said that through this practice, you have increased your pain tolerance, your capacity to be with an unpleasant experience. It might have been, I don't know, but I guess there's a question for me. Has that happened at the expense of actually being able to know what the first experience is, what the basic experience is? Does that make sense, that question?
You mean do I know that I'm experiencing this thing?
Yeah.
Yes, I know I am experiencing this thing, and then I kind of be able to like stand like separate from it, like because it's not like I will whining in pain or like I don't know how to say, but it's not like I'm one with the pain. Like I maintain distance with.
Yeah,
I observe it.
sounds very skillful. And the challenge then is to be able to talk to a doctor who's not used to somebody having that skill, to be able to explain to a doctor that the pain is about the pain, because they'll be used to seeing people who are fused with their pain, who are adding the second arrow. They will be used to hearing people talk about their pain experience in a different way than somebody who's doing this practice is able to. So I'm wondering whether it's a communication thing, whether there's something about how you need to communicate to a doctor who's not used to somebody with that capacity.
Yes, I think there is something to it, but there is also other thing is like the pain is not used to inhibit my ability to do other thing as it was. Like, and
Wonderful.
then yes, and then if I said they will told me to scale the pain like 1 to 10, and then I'm like, I'm not
Mm,
sure. And then
mm,
I will say something like, I can still do things, but the pain will be in my mind all the time. I will communicate to them in ways like this. And then, yes, but I do have, the question I do have is like, will meditation be dangerous in this aspect? Like, will you have the danger of like you omit your pain to a certain extent because of your
mm,
meditation practice?
I think so long as you are not avoiding it, if you still know that that pain is a real sensation, it seems to me avoidance would be a bigger have a bigger danger. But that's just my immediate response. I would have thought that avoidance, rather than actually being mindful of the pain, is going to be the bigger danger. If you're mindful of the pain, you know it's there. Even though you're able to respond to it and relate to it in a way that's more skillful than the average untrained person, you'll still know that it's there. And finding a way to communicate that might be the challenge.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Very welcome. And we have reached the bewitching hour. So wherever you are in the world, whoever you're with today, I'm looking at Martha and her gorgeous cat. I don't know if it's your gorgeous cat that helps you connect with a sense of loving kindness, Martha. But lovely to see everybody again today. And I look forward to seeing you, some of you, next week as we continue the exploration. And just a little taster, many of you know this already, but the third foundation of mindfulness is mindfulness of mind. So we've done mindfulness of body, mindfulness of Vedana or feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And the next one is mindfulness of mind. So that'll be the focus of our meditation next week. And ongoing discussion of this terrific challenge of being a human being in a human body in a crazy world. Okay. Good night, everybody. Lovely to see you. Go well.